and welcome to the Doofcast, a film and TV podcast from Doof Media. My name is Scott Daly, and I am a man of constant sorrow.
And I'm Matt Freeman, and I'm a paterfamilias.
This week on the show, it is another one of our monthly Doof Canon episodes. Matt, what are these episodes of the show all about?
Once a month, those individuals that donate to us on Patreon at the Council of Doof level will get to collectively decide on a movie for the community to consider for entrance into the canon. Scott and I and maybe some guests will meet, talk about the movie, and then present our case for why it should or should not be admitted.
But as always, we will leave that final decision up to you guys. So stick around, listen to our arguments, and then find the link in the show notes to cast your vote. Matt, what has our council brought for us this month?
This month, our council has nominated and our patrons have voted on the 2000 Joel and Ethan Coen film, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Oh my God. So first of all, the realization that this movie came out 22 years ago did not sit well with me. 22 years ago.
I know that's closer to the 1930s than it is to the present.
No, it's not.
Oh, you're right.
So we're going to be talking all about Oh Brother, Where Art Thou. It will be a full spoilers review. And then at the end, we will give our opinion on whether this movie is worthy and then pass off that vote to you. And then before we finish this week's show, we wanted to do another one of our top five, Matt. And this time we're going to be our top five best opening scenes in movies. Or favorite, best, whatever you want to call it. I don't actually care. The rules don't matter, and we do this for fun. So who cares?
Yeah, ones that we feel good about right now.
Yep. So that is the show this week. I'm looking forward to it, Matt. So let's do the show. Now that we've introduced the show, let's do it.
To get back to his wife and kids, Ulysses Everett McGill will do anything.
Hey, any boy, Smitty's.
But he's about to get off on the wrong track.
Who elected you leader of this outfit?
Well, Pete, I figured it should be the one with the capacity for abstract thought. Boys, if you just stick with me. Man, we're in a tight spot. Believe me, I got a plan. And I can get my wife back and we can get out of here.
Okay, I'm with you fellas.
Matt, what is Oh Brother, Where Art Thou all about?
In the Deep South, during the 1930s, three escaped convicts search for hidden treasure while a relentless lawman pursues them.
This movie was written and directed by Joel and Ethan Coen. It is based on Homer's The Odyssey, and it stars George Clooney, John Turturro, and Tim Blake Nelson as our trio of convicts. I think the thing where we should start here, Matt, on this conversation is that line I just read, based on Homer's The Odyssey.
Yes. Tell everyone what you told me earlier today, Scott, because I loved it.
So I was trying to prepare for the show, and I was being a professional critic who was like doing the legwork, and I was watching the movie, and I had a summary of the Odyssey on the other screen because I am enough of a professional to have a summary of the Odyssey, not enough of a professional to reread the entirety of the Odyssey for this episode. But I had a summary of the Odyssey, and I was trying as I went through to, match the parts together. And I was trying to see, where are the Coens being very clever in how they're stitching the movie that they're creating to the actual story of the Odyssey. And I was finding, Matt, that there's not that many moments of clear comparison. I mean, there's two big ones, right? There is the Cyclops, played by John Goodman, and then there are the nymphs, the sirens. And that's basically it. I mean, I guess loosely the fact that he returns home and finds that his wife is being courted by a suitor but that's basically it. And so I was like, there's, for a movie that gives a story credit to Homer, there's not a lot of the Odyssey in this movie. And so I was doing some digging around. Well, turns out, Matt, that Joel and Ethan Coen have not read the Odyssey at all, ever. They just know it through adaptations and cultural osmosis. And literally during the course of making this movie, they were like, well, it's about like a person going home. So why don't we like do it like an Odyssey thing? But they were also like mostly thinking about The Wizard of Oz while they were doing this as well, which I think fits better. So it's so funny that this is like, when you say like based on the Odyssey, I think the two things that jump in people's mind are Ulysses, which they pretend they've read, and Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, which they've actually seen. And this is like barely an Odyssey story.
Hilarious. Yeah, you're right. I mean, I think as we were talking about this earlier, we realized like, well, there's some sort of vague elements, like they think that John Turturro has been turned into a toad, and there are people who get turned into animals in the Odyssey, but it's not at all the same situation or even close. It's just a weird dreamlike odyssey through the deep south. It's so funny that we're talking about this because we were just talking about the Odyssey on Kingslingers literally last night, so this is very confusing actually. Which,
to be into, like, no one's going to believe us on this. Entirely a coincidence. Like when we picked the discussion question and we were talking about the Odyssey and Kingslingers, the vote for this was not done yet, so we had no idea that this movie was going to be picked and win. It's just a coincidence, but it's a delightful one.
Yeah, so we're deep in the Odyssey this week.
Yeah, it's. I mean, you're absolutely right that, like, the thing that we noticed when we, like, if you Google stories based on the Odyssey, the thing that you'll find is really, it's like the cultural understanding of what the Odyssey is as a story is just guy trying to get home, right? That's basically it. Like a story of a man or woman, trying to go home and facing trials and tribulations on their journey back home. And that's really it. And so under that understanding, it's an Odyssey story for sure.
Sure. I'm not going to gatekeep being an Odyssey story. We one thing we discovered in the Kingslingers discussion question answers is that there are lots of stories that if you really squint, you can see as being related to the Odyssey.
Yes.
And that's fine.
And you can definitely tell that the moments in this movie that are most directly related to the Odyssey are the moments that are most well known by the culture, which makes sense because that's how the Coens know about them. The thing I liked particularly the most is, we have John Goodman as our Cyclops character because he has a patch over one eye. And then our characters, they don't sneak by him like hanging on to sheep that are going out of the cave, but they are dressed in KKK robes, and that's how they're trying to sneak by him, which is the Coens kind of like saying, hey, Ku Klux Klan people, you're just a bunch of sheep, which is a fun little commentary they're having here. I feel like in 2000 we could joke about that stuff a lot more than we can now because there's funny racists back then. There's funny racists, and now it's like, oh god.
Well, but back then it was like the KKK was basically the ancient past. Completely
Oops.
outside of memory and time. And
oops,
whoops, yeah. And then they put out the Cyclops' eye with a burning brand.
Yeah. Well, no, because they didn't though. This is where the Coens are like winking at you because they throw the Confederate flag at him and it's about to spear him in the eye, and then he catches it.
Right, but then the cross is the burning brand.
I guess it does fall on him, doesn't it? We don't see it actually put his eye out, but I guess dying counts as having your eye put out.
It seems like it's gonna fall right on his face. So
they defaced a burning cross.
Yeah.
So I think that's the second place we should go with this. This movie's hilarious. And actually, I should ask you the question, what are your overall thoughts on this movie? We jumped right into it, but what are your overall thoughts on Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
I love this movie. This is one of my favorite Coen Brothers movies. It's up there on my list of favorite movies, probably. Mm-hmm. I've seen the band that plays Man of Constant Sorrow and all the other, not all the other, but many of the other songs in this movie live, including the guy who sings The Man of Constant Sorrow. I think I've told the joke before, like twice on this podcast, actually, that the singer said before he performed it was that he called his wife to tell her that he got the role for this movie. He's going to be in this movie. And then he's like, well, it's not really me. It's going to be George Clooney's face with my voice coming out of his mouth. And his wife says, oh, it's my fantasy, which is just the perfect way to open that song.
It is.
But, but like, it's funny because I will say, I think this movie had to grow on me. I think the first time I watched it, I didn't get it. And that is probably a combination of just being pretty young. I guess I was 15. And then also just like I wasn't prepared for the Coen's humor style. But now that it has grown on me, I just love this movie.
Yeah, I agree. This is such a fun movie. Like I always forget how funny it is. The Coens, when they're trying to be really funny, like are just it's nothing like any other kind of humor exists in the world. Like I love the sense of humor of Fargo, and this movie I think is maybe one of their funniest movies. I don't know if I can back that up with facts, but I find this movie very, very funny, and I find the stars of it just absolutely perfect. Like we kind of talked about this on Kingslingers this week because someone answered this movie, and George Clooney, what he's doing in this movie is so unlike George Clooney. I think, we have to go back to the year 2000 to think about who George Clooney was then, right? He's like the biggest star in the world. I think Ocean's 11 had come out. When did that movie come out? I don't even know. Let me check. Ocean's 11 was 2001, so that's not even out yet when this movie comes out. So really, we've just seen Clooney as like guy from ER and leading man in movies, and this is such a different role for him. This is him, allowing himself to be an idiot, and yes, he's the lead of the movie, but he's kind of a fast talking moron, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, he's the huckster. He's not supposed to be admirable. He does a lot of bad things. Like I think this is one of the things. He's sort of like Odysseus in that he is clever and resourceful, but not necessarily moral. And that's why it's a fun it's a fun journey for him, actually, because he is this flawed character. And he steals the guy's watch. Which is, God, just everything about this movie is hilarious because I'm doing that thing where I want to keep stopping and just like saying the part that was funny. Because that's how you be funny, is you just say things that you saw that were funny.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's what I did when I was a child, and I was funny, right? So it must be the truth.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, like this, you were talking to me earlier today that this movie is just immensely quotable, and it's so true. It's like the Coen turn of phrase here delivered by John Turturro and Tim Blake Nelson and George Clooney. Like every joke lands, and I think part of the reason that you need this movie to grow on you is because you miss so many of the lines because they're coming like one after another. Especially, I feel like Tim Blake Nelson is like doing the reaction line, and it's always the funniest part of the scene. Like that's so like he's in a movie where he's next to George Clooney, like superstar George Clooney, and in a lot of ways he steals the show sometimes.
Yeah,
and I don't know, like the trio of them just work so remarkably together.
Yeah, you're right. He often gets a lot of the sort of like closing punchlines on the bits. And I don't know. The funniest thing to me is how many of the quotable moments from this movie you would never think would be quotable. Like I was thinking earlier about, well, I never figured you for a paterfamilias, Everett. It's like, that seems like the most specific, non like generalizable quote ever. And it's like, no, I've used that. I've had people use that. It's like anytime anybody's having a child, you're going to say, you're going to somehow bring in an Oh Brother Where Art Thou reference. Right.
Sure.
It's just, I don't know. I think there's something about the delivery and just the succinctness of it. Like it's, I was thinking about this. I was like, what makes something quotable? Like, can you set out to write something that people are going to be quoting for 25 years? And I don't think you can, or I think you just have to be a genius like the Coens, basically. Yeah.
I mean, I think if you set out to make a line quotable, it almost doesn't become that way. Like it has to just be, this is the perfect line for the scene. And for whatever reason catches on to people like, oh, not the livestock. Like I just, I think it's honestly like George Clooney is 100% a leading man. Of course, he's one of the most beautiful men on the planet. He's perfect, but he's also a character actor. And I think the reason this movie works is because it's just a bunch of character actors playing with each other for an hour and 45 minutes, right? Like look at this cast. Like these are all like pretty well-known character actors. We have John Goodman, we have Holly Hunter's in here as well. We have Wayne Duvall, who plays Homer, which we need to talk about how the Coens give Homer a writing credit, and then the character they name Homer is a secret racist, terrible person. Like what? That's a choice, right? That's certainly a choice.
fascinating, isn't it? Yeah, like I was thinking about this. I was like, what is the meaning behind making this character be named Homer? Because he's just the villain.
Yeah.
Of course, he's not actually the devil, but he's I guess
No.
he's the worldly villain.
Because the devil is the sheriff.
The devil is the sheriff.
Which I figured out just now, today. I figured this out. You probably made this link before I did, but the three men are talking with Tommy Johnson, who says he sold his soul to the devil, and they describe the devil, and he said, no, that's not the devil. The devil is a white man. He's white as you guys. He's got blank eyes and a deep hollow voice, and he walks around with a mean old hound, and that's the sheriff. Is exactly that. He's got big glasses over his eyes the whole time. He's literally the devil, and I never put that together for whatever reason.
Yeah, it's the devil. It's the devil's pursuing them, and then also when they when the posse finds them in the woods and they're with Tommy, they specifically say that Tommy lit out like he was terrified. It's because
he recognized the devil. Yeah,
he recognized the devil. Yeah.
That's perfect. I mean, gosh, there's so many things to talk about, but I think you take this cast and you put it together with the Coen type of writing, and it just sings. The movie just sings. Like it's not a long movie. We said it's like an hour and 45 minutes, and it's just them kind of bouncing from trial and tribulation from one to the other. And there's so much energy behind it. There's always this kind of frantic, funny energy. And you're right. Like, this is a movie that technically there's nothing actually like magical or supernatural happening in this movie. Right. But it is also a movie that doesn't feel like it takes place in the real world in any way. Yeah,
that's true. I think there's it's all to the tone. It's really quite a weird movie. Like in terms of how it's shot. Like, so for example, so I watched this with my kids, and they hadn't seen it before, and they're honestly, they're probably pretty young for it. It's such a weird movie, but like, it was interesting to me because one scene that I think is particularly kind of magical realism-y was one that they reacted to in a way where they were like, what is going on here? And it was the one where the three men are just in the woods arguing, and you begin to hear singing. And suddenly George Clooney's like, what the hell is that singing? And they look around, and there's just tons of people walking through the forest toward the water to be baptized. And everyone's singing this beautiful song together. And it's like, yeah, this never would happen. Like, this is not like, this is the way in which it's kind of a floaty, unreal tone, is that people, burst into song.
Sure.
And, I mean, it's not a musical, but it's so it's like the closest movie to being a musical without being a musical that I've ever seen.
I mean, the only reason I wouldn't call it a musical because for the most part, people aren't singing out their feelings actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, music is such a core part of everything that's happening in this movie. Like every scene, every important scene and moment usually has some sort of song attached to it.
Mm-hmm. The sirens.
Yeah.
All things where it's like, yeah, like we know we're in a magical realm, even though, like you said, nothing magical is actually happening.
Even the KKK rally like has the lead guy, like the vizier, whatever they call it, like singing to his people. Like even that has a musical number in it. So
yeah, one thing that I'm probably just taking things too literally, but I've never quite understood, why is it? Like, is it just supposed to be a funny joke that George Clooney's character can sing incredibly well, and they just happen to be? I mean, okay, so they have the guitar player who just got magical guitar playing abilities from the devil. So like that's
it was
part
based
of the
off
explanation.
a real person, by the way.
Right.
A real singer named Tommy Johnson, who actually said he sold his. Someone asked him how he got so good, and he said he sold his soul to the devil. So that's based on a real thing.
Yeah, and I believe you can actually find recordings of his music, by the way, which is fascinating because it's like 100 years ago.
Yeah.
But I guess I don't know. I don't know if it's a joke or what exactly that, like, this band of runaway prisoners just happens to have made this hit that sweeps through the whole state.
Yeah, they just walk into a recording studio with no like pre-thought and just bang out a hit. Like they don't even like, are they improvising the song? Like there's
Right.
no, like there's not. And I think that is part of the absurdity of the movie is that,
Right.
yeah, this would never happen in any way, shape or form. And I mean, I think part of it, like I read actually that George Clooney worked for a long time to get his voice right to do the singing part. And then at the end they decided to dub in someone else. And I think that's such a brilliant choice because I don't think the movie hides the fact that they're lip singing at all.
Yeah.
I think like, I don't know how, like what specifically this trick is, but it's just so incredibly obvious that they're lip singing and it's not shying away from that at all. And I think that's part of the unreality of it, that this is like, it's so clear that this is not his actual voice. And yet everyone in the world seems to think it is. So yeah, I mean, I think the one I guess criticism of this movie is I really don't think there's any kind of huge deeper meaning going on in this thing. I think this is just like a good time film it's filmed very well and it's very entertaining and it's very funny. But like, is there some profound statement the Coens are trying to make with "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou"? I don't think so. I mean, here's something I will say that I didn't notice until this time. The opening of the movie is we open up on a chain gang busting rocks and singing, right? And apparently the song that they sing actually was a real recording of like a real chain gang like singing a real song, which is cool. And the sepia tone that it totally envelops the entire rest of the movie isn't present in the opening few minutes during that original chain gang. So we see them and then the movie like shifts out of this normal tone into the sepia tone, and that's when we first see our three characters and them escaping from the chain gang. And it's a different chain gang because it's not in the same color. And I think, you know, to try to maybe squint at something the Coens are doing, the chain gang that we see at the beginning before we've changed the sepia tone is all black men. There's no white men in that thing at all. It's all black men singing and busting up these rocks. And there is a lot of, you know, commentary on Southern racism kind of going on in this movie. It's not foregrounded really. It's just kind of there.
Yeah.
As just probably just like because it's set in the South in the 30s, and so how could it not be there? But like it is definitely there, and I don't know if like the Coens are trying to specifically say something with this. I don't know.
Well, I think so. I mean, I do think so. I mean, I think it's definitely a choice to have Tommy Johnson, the actual human man, be in your movie. I mean, okay, so it's very much about music. We just talked about that, right?
Yeah.
So like, correct me if I'm wrong, but is Papi O'Daniel also not a real person?
I have no idea.
Let me look this up because I'm pretty sure he is. Papi O'Daniel.
Looks like he was a Texas governor.
Papi O'Daniel was governor, which I knew he was,
and he got famous for advertising on the radio, so that fits as well.
Yeah, right. So there's all these ideas of popular music, radio broadcasting music, getting like the hearts of the people through music, right?
Right.
And you know, you've got Tommy Johnson, the guy who you could argue is responsible for the song being a hit.
Yeah, I think that'd be fair. Yeah.
In the background, never acknowledged.
Right.
And that like that's kind of a. I mean, it's interesting because when they go to record the song, there's that whole exchange where the guy asks if they're black, and they're like, yeah, we're all black. They lie because he's blind, and then he's like, oh yeah, I'm not. Then I'm not gonna, you know, I don't record those kind of songs, and then they're like, we lied. we're actually white.
Yeah, but then he still thinks they're black at the end of them, because when someone comes in saying, hey, where are those Soggy Bottom boys? It was like, oh, the black kids, and like. That you're right that is really interesting, because one of the things that this movie is perhaps saying, maybe it's making a joke about saying it actually, that like what happens is here the quote unquote progressive, you know, for change man of the people guy that's running for governor is actually a closeted racist. He's a member of the KKK. He's the leader of the group actually, and he attempts to, like, he thinks he understands his constituents enough to point out that these are the no good people, including the fact that they're integrated, right? They have a black man in their band, and and like the people are just like, oh, we don't give a shit about that because we like the music. And so he takes the wrong bet, right? And of course Pappy O'Daniel, like, who I don't think gives a shit about change or gives a shit about the people or anything. He just wants to win governorship, like, leaps on this. And you're absolutely right. Like, he pardons them at the end, and it's like the one who made the song didn't commit a crime. Like, you're all four of you are pardoned, and it's like, wait a minute, he didn't do anything. And he's not, like, because George Clooney is at the front, he's the one, who's getting all the credit for this. And I do think maybe this is a commentary on, the idea that music, like, I think this is a popular idea that like a lot of white people became less racist because they liked music and sports and, like, seeing the integration of these things. But, like, is that really a way to solve racism, or is it just like, no, I like my thing,
well,
and so now I'm going to be fine with it? I don't know.
I think solving racism is a tall order. I think quashing bigotry is what it accomplished.
Sure.
In a big way for a lot of people, over a long period of time, turning a crank very slowly. I think it did do that, because it's pretty hard to feel the same level of vicious bigotry when you're like, hey, this song slaps. I'm sorry,
Sure. But I mean, is that like, are you less bigoted, or do you just like the Soggy Bottom Boys? I don't know. Like, cause you're right that, like, the fact that it's three white men and a black guitarist that's behind them all, like, I guess you could argue that if they thought that they were black the whole time, that the entire South loved the song anyway, is like, well, that's good, I guess. I don't know, man. I just don't know.
Yeah, I don't know how to think about all that. And I mean, I think this is kind of a Coen Brothers thing to do, is just to throw a lot of stuff out there and be like, hey, what do you think? It's funny because when we kind of started this thread, you were saying, like, you were basically saying you don't know if there's any deep meaning. And it's funny because I was like, well, I wasn't thinking at all about the racial commentary, even though I definitely think that there's a lot, like to the subtext of the movie. A lot of it is racial commentary. A lot of it is just sort of a love letter to music. But then also, I think the sort of redemption arc of our main character is actually a pretty good little tale. Where he, he is this selfish liar. And I mean, there's a very kind of just, I don't know how to describe it other than Christian thread of morality through the story. Where so first of all, there's all these instances where it's like characters get baptized. There's just a lot of sort of set pieces that are, a lot of the music is explicitly Christian influenced music.
Sure.
And then it ends with him, throwing himself on the mercy of God and just begging to be saved
and getting baptized
and getting baptized. And then when the miracle comes and saves him, he still denies that it was a miracle because he is a flawed human being, but it doesn't mean he's a bad person. Like the ending is not like, we hate, like, this guy sucks. It's like, it's like, yep, that is what he would say. he would totally continue to deny that this was a miracle. But, like, it doesn't matter because the grace of God doesn't care if you were grateful or not,
Sure. And I mean, like, while he's saying that this is, like, it's just science because we knew this place was going to get flooded on this day, and so it's not a miracle, like, Timmy comes by with the exact wardrobe that's supposed to have the ring in it that he's here looking for, right? So, like, it's very Tommy. I said Timmy, I meant Tommy. It's very funny in that regard too. So you're right. I actually don't know if the Coens themselves are religious or not. But it is a movie that whether it's specifically like believe in God and the Christian God, it definitely seems to be like a higher power type thing is important in defining who you are, because I think these are three men who really don't know who they are. And they kind of find that over the course of their journey. And I love Tim Blake Nelson's character. Like, the first thing he does is like, he sees the baptism happening, and the first thing he does is like sprint out there and to get baptized immediately, because to him, he's like, I need a fresh start. And this is this is the opportunity I have to get a fresh start. I'm absolutely going to take that. And he really doesn't do anything bad for the rest of the movie. I guess like they're there with the bank robber, but they don't do anything. And like the one time they do steal something, when they steal the pie off the windowsill, he's the one that comes in and puts the money down for it, you know?
Yeah. Like that's the thing, is all this stuff is happening in the background. There's this, it's funny because I'm having trouble putting my finger on it, because it's little things like that throughout the movie. But there are these ideas of forgiveness and grace and prayer and like giving yourself over. By the way, I'm not saying like, oh, this film is Christian,
no, this is not a faith-based.
Yeah, it's not an evangelical film. This is just this is one of the themes of the movie is, these ideas. And I think these are the sorts of things that were happening in this period of time too, because it's during the Depression, and so there is a lot of deprivation and hopelessness. That's the whole point of this highly upbeat and foot tapping song called "I Am a Man of Constant Sorrow."
Yeah, you're right. I mean, you actually sit there and analyze this. It's such a fucking catchy song. Like every time I watch this movie, I have this song in my head for days because it's so freaking catchy. But yeah, I mean, it is this upbeat song about this incredibly sad person. And I mean, thinking more about the movie, we have so many characters that represent religion in certain ways. And the one character that represents religion in the most straightforward way is the Bible salesman, who is the guy that rips them off. This is John Goodman is a Bible salesman, and he is doing it for the money. I think you're right that Christianity and religion and spirituality are permeate this movie in many different ways. And I think, one of the things is the core values of some of that stuff define the morality of the movie, certainly. But it is not saying like, yes, believe in Jesus and you will be saved. Like, no.
Yeah. It's, I mean, once again, it's throwing the ideas out there and asking you to put them together however you wish.
Right.
And like you don't even, much like the character, you don't even have to believe that it was a miracle. Like I mean, it's kind of clear that the movie, within the logic of the movie's universe, it's like God, or if we're stepping back and calling this the Odyssey, it's like the gods have intervened, the gods have spoken here, and they have given Odysseus a reprieve. And he continues to be a doubter and basically a sinner fundamentally, but like that's okay because we're all sinners. Like I think that's why it's that's why the movie leaves you with this good feeling, because it's funny because it's about this really kind of sad, terrible subject matter of just like literal prisoners escaping from a chain gang in the middle of the Great Depression, dealing with horrible racist murderers and people trying to swindle them at every turn, and almost being lynched, and then being saved at the last minute by the grace of God. It's like you could have made this movie not be a comedy. Like you could, and it would just be this, incredibly harrowing ordeal. But I think the key is, number one, it is done in this comedic tone where there's all this irony. And then number two, it does have that happy ending. Like, because if you were going to make this a depressing movie, you would end it with them getting hanged.
Yeah.
And it would, and like that could work as a story, right? Like that. I feel like that's the kind of book they made us read in high school,
Sure. Yeah. And I mean, to kind of go back to what you were saying, does it matter if you believe that the thing that spared your life is a miracle or just circumstance if it causes you to change your behavior? Like at the end of the day, does that matter, right? The important part here is whether or not Everett believes that, the hand of God swooped in and saved him, or, just circumstance ended. He has changed his life. He goes home, he commits himself to his wife and his family, and he's gonna go straight, and he's not gonna lie to people anymore. He's not gonna swindle people anymore. He's not gonna be that person anymore. So that's all that matters.
Yeah. I think you're right. That's what I took away too.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I'm saying there's only one correct interpretation, but that does seem relatively clear.
Yeah, for sure. I guess I want to talk about that sepia tone a little bit here, because I think that's one of the other things this movie is most famous for is that this was the first film that was digitally color corrected for the entire length of the movie. This is the first time it happened. It was all the way back in 2000. And I was actually looking into this because, you wonder how this kind of thing happens. And actually what happened was when they were filming, it was like super green everywhere. Like, South can be very green at certain times of the year. And so it was just very, very bright, vibrant green. And that's just not the tone that they wanted for the movie. They wanted it to be this kind of yellowish, more, like fading kind of tone to it. And they tried to physically and manually, color correct the film using different methods of development and stuff like that when you're using actual film. And they just found it wasn't working satisfactorily. So they kind of had to back into this computer process where like, it's just too bright. It's too green. And we need it to be faded a little bit. And so someone was like, hey, we got this newfangled computer thing that can actually color correct this entire movie for us, and so let's try it out. And so that's what they did. And so like I just love the anecdote of that. It's like when someone does something for the first time, it's never out of just like, I guess unless you're James Cameron, it's never out of just like, I want to see if this is possible to do. It's just like it comes from necessity, and they realized they had to change the color of this movie. It just wasn't working as bright and vibrant to green as it was. And so they backed into having to use this computer graphics process.
That's fascinating. I almost feel like this is maybe my brain hallucinating something, but I feel like it might actually become like more green at the end of the movie.
It might
to sort of signify a change. But no, that's so interesting, because I sometimes think it's funny how some films will try to depict the South as being as like they get confused between the South and the West.
Yes,
because like the South is like the most green and lush place on the entire North American continent.
Yeah.
But very often you want to depict it in a different way. And this is a film where I think, due to the idea that they're trying to convey of like, this is the Depression, everything sucks, everything is dying. There's I don't know if this was contemporaneous with the Dust Bowl, but it all kind of, you're painting with the same brush anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to make it look like everything's dying and worn out.
Yeah. And of course it also makes it feel more like a storybook. It makes it feel more unreal in the perfect kind of way. I think it just works really well.
I saw a discussion the other day that I disagreed with, but I thought was interesting nonetheless, where people were basically saying they were comparing, old movies from, I don't know, 30 or 40 years ago against modern movies. And they were basically saying, they had like a shot of like Lawrence of Arabia or something. And then they had a shot of Dune that just came out last year.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, notice how like the fact that Dune is so color corrected and color graded makes it not seem real. And this was being put forth as like a criticism. And I was kind of like, well, okay, look, like when you put the shot side to side, you can see that the color grading has drastically changed the image just objectively. But the thing is, when you're actually watching the film, your brain kind of renormalizes based on the color palette you're seeing, and you don't ever perceive that it's not correct. I just thought it was an interesting conversation, because I don't think they're like 100% wrong. Like, you definitely, even though your brain, to use my word that I'm not sure is the right word, you kind of renormalize to see everything in at least a kind of relative color palette. You're still know on some level that image is wrong. Like when you're watching "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou," you're conscious, or maybe it's operating in your subconscious, that the film is sepia toned, like an old photo,
Yeah.
And that has an effect. So I don't know. I that kind of just threw a lot out there, but I was just thinking about the impact of color grading on film, and
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess my thing is sometimes we try to make a larger point. Like bad color grading is bad, whether it's digital or not. Good color grading is good. Like this movie is an example of it being good. I don't know. I think I think that there are a lot of instances in which we use digital photography and everything we can do in a computer now to a movie that does make it look unreal. I think Dune is such an interesting example because I find that movie absolutely beautiful to look at. But like that movie takes place on a different world and in a different world. And so I'm fine with it not looking real in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean that was my impression as well. Was like it's supposed to feel otherworldly, but and I guess it's like a tool like any other, where you just want to make sure that you're using it appropriately. And I think changing the South to look sepia toned is absolutely a stylistic choice that works with this movie because it's already highly stylized in so many ways.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, like the reason whenever we do this thing where we like look back at old movies and are like, oh, isn't it great? It's so much better the way they used to do it. And then when you like read about why they did it that way, it's almost always because they didn't have a choice. Like cameras back in the 30s sucked, and they were very bad, and they needed an absurd amount of light to actually capture the image. And so you had to have these giant fucking lights everywhere. And so you couldn't do a lot with like lighting in your cinematography, right? Like that's like the reason why old movies like look completely washed out is because they needed that much light to capture the image. They just had to like drop huge lights covering every square inch of the scene, because any bit that loses a little bit of light just won't be captured by the camera. And so like it's not like, yes, style emerges out of necessity. That's always the way it happens. And we live in an age now where cameras are much, much, much better at picking up low light, and we can do interesting things with lighting, and we can do interesting things with color. And sometimes they're good and sometimes they're bad. And I don't know, like I kind of automatically push back against any idea that says like this entire method of doing things is bad inherently.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, yeah, obviously I agree. Imagine being the first person who discovered that you could cut between scenes and that it wouldn't mess up your sense of what was happening.
Yeah, I believe you can watch like the first movie that uses edits like that, because a lot of the earliest movies were just they were just like plays that were just shot on film and then played back. And then, someone was like, oh, you can like, there's continuity of scene if you like show, I think God, I don't remember for sure, but I feel like the first movie that does cutting in this way is about a fireman trying to put out a fire, and they do a thing where like he puts a ladder up against the side of the building and starts climbing up it, and then they cut to him crawling into a window, and it's like, oh, we get that's him. Like we just like, it's like, it's such an obvious thing to us that we don't even think about. But yeah, like that is something unique to film that is different from any kind of stage production ever. Like you can't, there's no, and the eye just deals with it. Right. It's remarkable.
Yeah. The fact that it just works. Like, it's not like you have to learn about edits. Like, like the smallest child is not thrown off by the idea of cutting between, a close up and a medium or whatever.
Oh yeah. It's wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's such a cool art form.
Yeah. Speaking of computer graphics, I actually read that I forget which group it is that signs off on the no animals were filmed or harmed in the filming of this movie. They didn't believe that the cow was digital. They thought that they actually just shot a cow, and so they had to like bring them in to demonstrate how the cow was computer generated.
Yeah, or the one that they hit with the car. Yeah,
yeah.
I remember, man. I remember. I think I remember seeing that in the theater and being like, oh, they killed that poor cow. because at the time I was like, there's no other way you could have done that, you know.
Yeah, it's fascinating because I had two separate reactions. The first was, wow, I can't believe like yeah, they did that. Like I can't believe like that's digital, but like at the time people might not have known that. And the other reaction I had was, in today's day and age, even being able to do that digital, I don't know if a movie that comes out today shows the bullets penetrate the cow and shows the car hit the cow in the way that this movie did it. Like that was part of it that felt, you know, despite the fact that it's clearly digital, part that felt dated. Like I don't know if we do that today. Like it was a little shocking and jarring seeing just how much like animal violence is in movies all the time, but like how much like direct on screen animal violence. Like I felt like I was waiting for it to cut away before the car actually runs into the cow. And then you do your cut to the actors who go, ooh, you know?
Yeah.
They didn't do that.
I feel like that's a Coen Brothers touch though, to show the horrible thing.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I think that's their, to them, that's funny is the thing. Like they have such a dark sense of humor that showing the cow get hit by a car is funny. Like it's so hard to articulate what their humor, like what is funny about certain parts of this movie. Like the idea that you have this famous bank robber who is manic depressive, and he picks them up as hitchhikers, and they're too dumb to realize that he's a bank robber literally on the run from the cops at that exact moment. It's a comedy of errors situation, but just like the frame of it is just bizarre. I guess it's just a really bizarre, and I think that's what I said at the very beginning, like how I think I had to kind of grow into it, is like you just don't know what to make of it at first.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think that is something that's so inherently Coen. I mean, I'm thinking of Burn After Reading, which is a movie I love so much that is just exactly like that. It's like dealing with these incredibly dark things, but it's having so much fun with them.
Yeah.
I mean, like even this, like the idea that some of the funniest lines in the movie are like when Everett reveals his whole plan was bullshit, and John Turturro's like, my sentence was 2 weeks from being over. They added 50 years.
Yeah.
When I get out, I'll be 84. And like, that's incredibly sad. That's incredibly sad for him. And then we come in with our second character that goes, well, I'll only be 82. It's just like you're absolutely right that they find so much humor in horribleness.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's reference what I said a bit ago about like you could have done this movie as a horrible tragedy. I think that's kind of the essence of a Coen Brothers comedy. Maybe maybe I'm being overly reductive, but it's like take something actually horrible and then make it so absurd that it becomes funny. And then in order for it to be a real comedy, it has to kind of end on an upbeat. And so that's what they do with this movie. That's what they do with all their comedies. But like the subject matter is still quite dark.
Yeah. Let's look. Inept man hires hitman to kill his wife. Yep. That's exactly that formula you just said. A reformed criminal kidnaps a baby to give to his wife who desperately wants kids of her own. Yep. That's incredibly dark thing to do that is made into a comedy. Right. Like you're absolutely right here. This is them to a T. Yeah.
It's I feel like we cracked something here. I mean, even Fargo, it's funny because it's like, is Fargo a comedy? No,
but
but it's funny.
It's so funny because like when we did so years and years and years ago, you and I did a deconstructing directors thing for the Coens. It was not the way we do it right now, where we do an episode for each movie. It was like all at once, but we kind of did like the Coen comedies, and we just like said we're just going to talk about the funny ones. So we did The Big Lebowski. I think we did Raising Arizona, and we put Fargo into that group, I think. And I don't know if it belongs there. I mean, it certainly is hilarious, right? It is. It is a very hilarious movie, but it's an extremely dark movie as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, some of the funniest parts of it are the darkest parts. I mean, the whole, and that was your partner in the wood chipper, like that's not even like it's not even a joke. It's just like it's so horrible that you're just like, oh my god,
you can't help but laugh at it. Yeah.
Like you have to laugh at it. Exactly, you have to laugh at it, or you're just like, what a nightmare,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's the Coens, man. That's the Coens. And it's so funny because I just actually last week watched The Tragedy of Macbeth, which is the new it's the newest Coen Brothers movie. It's actually a Coen brother movie because I believe this is the first one that Joel worked entirely on his own on. I think, yes, Joel, not Ethan. Which is, by the way, they do this thing where they both direct all their movies, but one of them always goes uncredited. Like the director on this one was Joel Coen. On Oh Brother We're Out There was Joe Coen, but Ethan Coen definitely was there directing as well. I don't know why they do it that way. But Tragedy of Macbeth was just Joel Coen, and it's a great adaptation of Macbeth. I love it so much. Not a comedy, Matt, not a comedy at all. But I don't even know why I'm bringing this up, but it's just like I think they set out to like specifically. I say they. I think this was just Joel Coen. It's like set out specifically to not fall into that same trap, because I think there's ways that you could probably turn Macbeth into a comedy, because it is kind of an absurd story when you think about it. Like this idea that like this guy like is visited by some witches that say, "Oh, these cool things are going to happen. You're going to become Thane of Cawthor, and then you're going to become king, and it's going to be awesome." And he's like, whatever. And then he becomes the Thane, and then is immediately like, well, shit, guess I got to kill the king then. And you're just like, whoa, Macbeth, like that was a big leap you just made there. And like, it's kind of an absurd story, and that's part of the brilliance of it. And I think they could have Coenized it in an interesting way, but they wanted to be true to the language of Shakespeare, and it's a great movie, but I don't know. I think it's a really interesting choice, because you could definitely Coenize Macbeth in a lot of ways, just like they Coenized the Odyssey.
Yeah, right. I mean, I think that's the fascinating thing, is they're actually powerful enough artists that I think that they know the risk of sort of falling into self-parody.
Yeah.
Because I mean, the fact that you say the word Coenize and I know what you mean means that like, oh, well, then that means that you don't want to just keep kind of hammering on that stylistic thing over and over again, because that becomes tired. And
sure,
I don't think they have. Like, I want to be clear. Like, I don't think the Coens have repeated themselves a single time, because they keep doing such different conceptual things. But to the extent that they have a pattern, I think it's what we just kind of talked about, where it's like usually a very dark, disturbing subject matter, sometimes just done totally straight, like No Country for Old Men. And then sometimes done in like, we're gonna laugh through this, otherwise we'd have to cry through it.
I'm curious what your favorite Coens is.
I just had the list in front of me, and then I clicked away because I was following. Okay. Favorite Coens. Really, really like Fargo. I really, really like this movie. Yeah, I think those are my two favorites.
Okay.
What about you?
I think I'm always going to have a lot of fondness for Fargo, for sure. I really liked Inside Llewyn Davis. I haven't watched that movie since I saw it in theaters when it came out in, 2013, almost 10 years ago. Christ. That's a really, really great movie. It has some funny parts in it, but it is a much more kind of dour that brand of Coen movie. Also a movie in which music plays a very important role. So they obviously have a thing that they really like about music, and Oscar Isaac is phenomenal in it. So that's a great movie. I liked Hail Caesar a lot too, because I like movie making, and that's them kind of, just showing how much they love movie making too. And then No Country for Old Men is really good. Like, this is the thing about the Coens, is I love everything they do. Actually, like, my unpopular opinion is that I don't think The Big Lebowski is that great. It's fun. It's fine. I don't have the attachment to it that everyone else seems to have.
I don't. I mean, it's not among my favorites of their movies. Like, I get it. It's more, it doesn't really make me laugh, I think, is the difference. Like Oh Brother, I have just a delightful time. I don't know what they're doing with God, you just said the name of it. I'm looking at too many Wikipedia pages right now, so I'm kind of
which one?
The Big Lebowski. Like, I don't think they even knew what they were doing with it.
It's just so funny that it's become like Coen's in a lot of ways, and I guess Fargo is always going to be more that, because Fargo was like critically acclaimed as well as very popular. But I don't know.
Yeah,
it's kind of surreal in a way that a lot of other Coen stuff isn't.
Yeah, I mean, it almost seems like a small, silly movie that they made for fun that accidentally became extremely popular.
Sure, yeah.
Like, again, I don't think it's bad, but I agree with you that it's not my favorite.
I like Blood Simple a lot too. I think the only one I don't like is The Lady Killers. I think that's the only bad movie they've ever made. That I remember trying to rewatch it a couple of years ago, and I just like quit 10 minutes in, and I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this. Yeah. I don't know how you made me not like Tom Hanks, but you succeeded. Good job, Coens.
Yeah. Raising Arizona is also just an absolute classic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love Raising Arizona too. We did that for our first version of what is now the Doof canon.
Yeah.
Way back in the day, and it got in. So
it did. I remember it.
I think this maybe is the time to shift to that, though, Matt. So we both really, really love this movie, but should it be in our canon of great films? Is Oh Brother, Where Art Thou worthy of entrance into that canon? What do you think?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there we go.
Yeah, it's I couldn't think of a reason why not. I mean, if the canon means something like movies that everybody should see if they haven't, you should definitely see this movie if you haven't. 100%.
But what if we have a magical rule in which there can only be one Coen Brothers movie in the canon?
The only one that would even come close to supplanting it, in my opinion, would be Fargo, and I think it's I'd have trouble. I'd have to think over which of these movies is the better one. And a big part of me, the part of me that just likes to be happy, would want this movie to be put in over Fargo.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm finding myself at a crossroads here, Matt, where I want to say no, because it'll be the first time I've ever said no to one of these questions since we started doing this, and that feels important to me as a person that needs to say no more often. But that, I don't know, I feel like that would be bullshit. Like, I think if there was a rule that you can only pick one Coens, I don't think I would pick Oh Brother, Where Art Thou. I think it's a movie that's very fun, but I think the Coens have done fun with a little bit more profundity in other movies, and I don't know. I just like that more, and so I'm gonna say yes, but with the idea that only if we can have like 7 Coen movies in the canon, because like I would absolutely think Fargo should be in there over this. I think No Country for Old Men is truly one of the greatest movies ever made. It's absolutely wonderful. As we said, I really like Inside Llewyn Davis. I really like Raising Arizona. Like, I don't know. It's just, I feel like I feel like maybe what we'd have to do is come up with like the 3 different versions of the Coens and assign one movie to each version. And so is this the silly irreverent Coen movie? I guess I'm okay with that.
I definitely say yes, but also I still kind of want to say, you said that they've done more profound things, and I'm like, yeah, maybe, but I think the profundity is there in this movie. It's just, it's silly and you're happy and you're clapping along to the songs and you don't necessarily notice that the profundity is soaking into you. Because, there was a lot of theme stuff that we talked about in this conversation where I've honestly never thought about any of that stuff before, because that's not what I'm thinking about when I'm watching the movie, but it's evidently working on me. It's part of the story, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think this pound for pound is one of their best movies, comedy or no. But sure, I will nonetheless agree with you that there's absolutely no reason why we should say there's only one Coen Brothers movie, because they're geniuses.
Honestly, the only reason I do this thing is so we can make this part of the conversation interesting in any way, so like,
other than just yes.
Yes. So yeah, I mean, okay. So after all that, I am going to say yes, but I do agree with you that there's a lot of really great Coen movies out there, and like, people should watch more Coen stuff generally. Like,
I have to confess, I was going to avoid confessing this. You know what I'm going to say?
Oh no,
I haven't seen like several of their last movies.
I feel like maybe we need to do a deconstructing the Coen Brothers.
I think we might. I think that's the closest to the feeling of a slam dunk that I've had recently on the question of who should our next deconstructing directors be. Yeah,
because like there's actually some movies I haven't seen. I never saw A Serious Man, their 2009 movie, actually.
Neither did I.
I feel like I should have seen that, but I didn't. So that's one I've always wanted to see. But I think I've seen the rest of these. But yeah, okay. Well, maybe I haven't seen Intolerable Cruelty. But that's a weird movie.
Okay.
That's almost like a very un-Coen type movie, I think.
Yeah, we'll sort this out.
We've got so many directors we want to do. That's the biggest problem here. But yeah, I think it's a yes from both of us. Oh Brother, Where Art Thou is a very fun movie. Did you do you know why it's called that? Do you know what the story of the name of this movie is?
I don't.
There was a movie that came out in the 40s, I believe it was, called Sullivan's Travels. It's a very, very well-regarded, very famous movie. And that movie is about a director of films who decides he wants to make a movie about the common American that is like the common, like, poor, working class American people. And he does that by, pretending to be a homeless beggar man and kind of traveling around the country to experience what it's like to be a homeless beggar in America. And the movie he wants to make in this fictional story is called Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? So
cool.
That's where the name came from.
Gotcha. Good to know.
That's another good movie we should watch. Sullivan's Travels. It's very good.
All right, let's do it.
I don't know. It's got Veronica Lake in it, man, and Preston Sturges.
Sounds good.
Directed
Preston Sturges.
Directed by Preston Sturges. It's a good movie, and we should watch it someday. But we can't do that today because we've got to wrap up this episode. Doof. All right, Matt. So I want to talk to you about movie openings, and let me give you some background information for why I was thinking about this. So every year, my wife and her my sisters-in-law, kind of get together in February and have like a movie marathon weekend. This year, it was not the same because I have a baby now, and turns out babies don't like to watch movies. And so you can't just put movies on and they'll just watch them. So it was a very different experience this year. But this year we watched all 3 Indiana Jones movies. Yes, that's right. All 3 Indiana Jones movies.
Yes, I like all 3 of them.
And the one big experience I had while watching these movies was firstly, the opening scene of Raiders of the Lost Ark is one of the greatest opening scenes in the history of film. It is so amazing. Everything from how they introduce Indiana Jones to of course, the very famous ball rolling scene. It's all perfect and wonderful. And it's just an incredible opening to a really good movie. The other thing I realized was that the opening scenes in the following two movies are awful. Temple of Doom is just a really bad movie in general, and its opening is like a dance tap number that, like, when you go directly from Raiders of the Lost Ark to Temple of Doom like we did, you're just like completely whiplashed. Like, what the fuck is going on here? Why is this happening? And then I really, really love The Last Crusade, but the opening is the only part of the movie I don't like because it's young Indiana Jones getting his hat and his whip, and we're like, this is how he got all this stuff. It happened all at once in this one moment that, which is not anything you actually care about. That, like, you don't. It's not why you like Indiana Jones. Is like why and how he got his hat and whip, and why he's afraid of snakes. Like, I don't give a shit about any of that stuff.
That was fun when I was a child.
Yeah. But it got me thinking about, like, opening scenes. Like, so it was like, why is the opening scene of the first movie iconic and incredible, and the opening scene of the next two are hot garbage? And then, of course, the fourth that doesn't exist continues the hot garbage trend. Is this not a bad movie? Although, after watching Temple of Doom, Matt, I haven't seen Kingdom of the Crystal Skull recently, but I feel like that could legitimately give Temple of Doom a run for its money, because Temple of Doom is a truly horrid movie. It's like, putting aside the terrible racism that permeates every frame of that movie, it's also just like bad. And so I don't know. I think Crystal Skull could in some world be better than Temple of Doom. I don't know.
I mean, I can confidently tell you that I never liked that movie, even when I was a kid. So there's no danger of me saying, oh, but what about no.
I mean, it's a movie that I remember having fond memories of, and I hadn't watched it in a long time, and I watched it this time, and I watched it with my sister-in-law, who had never seen it, and she really likes Indiana Jones, but she had never seen that one, or she saw it like once, like 20 years ago, and hadn't seen it since, and she's just like, what the fuck is this? Like, the idea that, like, in the first movie, Marion Ravenwood is a character who gets in trouble a lot, but is also like a badass, and then we follow that up with the Willy character in Temple of Doom, who is the worst character in the world ever. She's so annoying. Like, I know what my cool action adventure movie needs: a character bitching about the action and adventure the whole time. That sounds fun.
Yeah.
She's the worst.
It's one of those weird ones where, like, it's like middle George Lucas, where people had given him they'd started to give him too much power, and this is one of the first indications we have of what happens when George Lucas has too much power and not enough people reining him in and being like, no, you can't do that.
And then, of course, Spielberg's falling in love with Willy, because that's his wife still. I think that's still his wife.
I think Lucas and Spielberg sort of enable each other's worst tendencies sometimes.
I think you're right. Yeah. But anyway, back to my point. Openings, film openings. What makes a good film opening? And I thought the best way to examine this is kind of having us collect our top 5 favorite openings to films and seeing maybe what it is about these things that stands out to us, and what makes a good opening scene of a movie.
Sure.
So we're going to go through these 5 and see if we can get to the bottom of this. So do you want to begin? Do you want to start it? I mean, I guess I will technically start it by saying I think Raiders of the Lost Ark is definitely one of my top 5. The just like everything about that opening scene, Matt, is perfect. Is perfect the word? I think it is. It's perfect. Like, from the way that we kind of hold our introduction of Indiana Jones for a very, very long time. We don't actually see him. Like, the movie opens with his back to us, and like he doesn't like step out of the shadows until 5 minutes into the scene, and then we go from that to him going through the temple and solving the traps and then dealing with everything. It's just a perfect encapsulation of what makes Indiana Jones great. It's iconic and wonderful and perfect.
Yeah. And it's its own little self-contained story. So I'm going to go ahead and spoil what I think makes a good opening, which is a 5 or 10 minute sequence, which is its own short story with its own beginning, middle, and end.
Yeah.
It serves the narrative function of introducing the character, obviously, but in so doing tells its own single story.
You're right, because it's not that opening doesn't relate to the rest of the movie, because it does, because there's a recurring character we see that bests Indiana in that opening scene that will come back later in the movie. But the movie is not about what happens
right
in that opening sequence.
Yeah. My first suggestion is Jurassic Park, which follows the same pattern, because the intro of Jurassic Park is dark jungle. What the hell's going on? They have a forklift that's carrying this giant cage. What's in the cage? People are being very serious and are in these uniforms, and they've got tasers, and then, oh no, something goes wrong. This is so dangerous and deadly, and this guy's getting ripped apart. And like none of like, yeah, it doesn't even have to be in the movie is the thing, though, because like it's set up, its tone, it's dread, it hooks you, and then we actually move into like a whole bunch of talking for like half an hour actually.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I'm inherently fascinated by is how a movie treats the knowledge that you take into the movie and it doesn't. Like, is Jurassic Park a movie that is aware that everyone that's going to be watching this movie knows it's about dinosaurs or not? And I think the interesting thing about that opening is, if I'm remembering it correctly, and it's been a while since I watched it, but I have watched it many times, we start in the middle of this jungle, and we see, the trees start to part, the jungle trees start to part. And for a second there, I think the movie acknowledges that maybe a dinosaur is about to poke its head through those trees. Right. And then it ends up being just a shipping container.
Right.
But then at the other time, the other side of that coin is the movie holds the reveal of what's in that crate for a very, very long time. We don't really get to see it at all. We see its eyes, right? And maybe we see some claws, but like we don't, like if you sat down not knowing that this was a dinosaur movie, would you know after this opening that that's a fucking dinosaur in there? I don't know if you would.
Yeah. I think the film knows that you're expecting a dinosaur to come out of the forest. Yeah, it's definitely throwing a lot of intentional kind of subversion of expectation and so forth at you, and just overall making you terrified. So yeah, that's Jurassic Park. Perfect intro.
I agree so much that it was on my short list.
Right.
The next one I'm going to do is a movie that I don't know if you've ever seen before. It's called Scream.
Still haven't seen it.
One day we will have to do an episode on this movie, because despite the fact that you're not really big into horror, this is one of the most important horror movies ever created. And one of the reasons for its popularity is how fucking good this opening scene was. So I'm going to spoil it for you here, Matt. Scream came out literally 30 years ago, so I don't feel bad about spoiling this for you here. The movie opens on Drew Barrymore, and Drew Barrymore is not the main character of this movie. So basically the opening scene is Drew Barrymore at home about to watch a scary movie. She gets a phone call, and it's our Ghostface guy who is messing with her and talking about scary movies with her and going to kill her. And the scene ends with Drew Barrymore dead. Spoilers. She's dead. And to put this in context, Drew Barrymore was and is a huge star. And in the marketing materials of this movie, they build her as the star. She's the biggest person on all the posters. She's anyone going to this movie that has seen the marketing materials for it would know that this is a movie where Drew Barrymore plays the main character. And then in the first 15 minutes, the movie unceremoniously kills her off, and it just throws you for an absolute loop. And you're just like, what the fuck is this movie now? And I think it's so creative. And like you said, it also tells its own contained story. It's the story of this woman and her experience with this creepy guy on the phone that escalates to a full drawn out fight between them that ends in her dead. And it's a remarkable sequence. And I like, even if you don't watch Scream, just like go to YouTube the opening scene, because it's so good. It's so, I mean, and I think, one of the things you said was, and a key part is it establishes characters, it tells a contained story, and I think the other thing is it sets expectations for what the rest of the movie is going to be. And I really think, like, by having this scene show our killer killing his first victim and establishing that this is a movie kind of about scary movies, like, because the whole conversation they're having is like he asks her what her favorite scary movie is, and then they have, like, he basically plays a game like, I have your boyfriend, if you get these trivia questions about scary movies right, I'll spare him. If you get any of them wrong, I won't. And so he's asking her like ticky-tacky, like horror nerd questions about slasher movies, that, spoiler, she gets wrong. She gets one wrong. And so it's fully establishing the meta nature that Scream is going to be, which is a scary movie about scary movies. And I think it accomplishes that so well, and it's such a remarkable watch. I love Scream. I love the series, but the opening 15 minutes of that movie are the best.
Yeah, and you're right. If I watched it on YouTube, then I won't be spoiling anything because it's the beginning of the movie anyway.
Yeah, I didn't tell you who the killer was.
Yeah, I what's funny is I actually still don't know who the killer is.
That's wild. I figure with like culture.
Yeah. I mean, what's funny is, like, I have a vague sense that it's like, oh, it's a surprise, but I'm like, yeah, well, that's always how you do that in that kind of movie. So
sure. All right, what's your next one, Matt?
My next one, I believe, will be Drive.
Oh, this was on my short list as well.
Damn it, Scott. Drive is one of my favorite movies. I just thought it was just an almost perfect movie overall. And the intro sequence is, it just hooks you, right? It's the perfect example of hooking you as quickly as possible into, this is going to be intense, this is going to be exciting. I'm really interested to figure out what's going on with this character. Just absolutely great filmmaking in every possible way. It's a fantastic little car chase sequence. If you haven't seen it, that's really all it is. It's just like a perfectly done sort of car chase getaway from the cops sequence.
Yeah, I haven't seen this in a minute, but this is basically like, this is the one where he's like listening to the police scanner and like is aware the second they spot him, and like just drives expertly, and is like, has perfect patience. And like, I mean, it's doing a lot of work to establish him as like, it needs to establish his character as like the fucking best at his job. Right.
Well, and establish him as just like ice cold, because he's sitting there and he's basically told the people who he's being the driver for, like, if you're not back in my car in like 4 minutes or something, I'm leaving. And even though he knows that like the alarm has gone off, he knows the cops are probably on their way, but he's just sitting there waiting because he told them he would wait, and you just see how steely he is. And that's, again, a short story, doesn't even really need to be in the movie. Those guys never come back into things. There's never any consequences of it. It's really just telling a little story, introducing this character, showing us what he's made of, and then we move on.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great pick. I love that movie. I need to revisit it. And I think anytime you get to see a character being good at their job is like crack for me. So, and God, that's a great scene.
Yep.
It's all coming back to me as we're talking about it. It's a great scene.
Yep.
All right. My next movie is one that I think, like, maybe not too original, because I've talked about this before, but the opening scene of The Matrix is one of the best opening scenes of all time. And I don't want to repeat too much of what I've said already, because I think on our Matrix episode, we went into this in a great amount of detail, all the ways in which this is doing exactly what it needs to be doing to establish what is what we're doing with this movie. That no one understands what this movie is yet, and it doesn't spoil anything of what the movie is going to be, but it firmly establishes and plays with your expectations in a lot of fun ways. It's just a really fucking great opening.
It is. Yeah. It's funny because a lot of these movies, I'm thinking about this as we go and realizing that a lot of these movies that have fantastic openings, they actually kind of then hit a little bit of a narrative slump immediately afterward. Like, what's funny, Jurassic Park and The Matrix, two of my favorite movies, maybe two of the best movies ever made, like objectively, kind of have a bit of a slump in the beginning of the film. Both of them do, in terms of pacing, and just it gets to be kind of talky. And I think that maybe from a script writing point of view, there was a decision made at some point where it's like, okay, we got to hook them well enough to get through the slump or the lull or the tension building, to put it in a less pejorative fashion. So we got to have a really banger opening scene, and I think maybe that's why that ends up happening.
Sure. Yeah, and just so I make sure it's said on the podcast, it's fucking insane for you to say that Jurassic Park has a slump. Fuck you. I hate you. You're wrong.
I'm talking about all the talking, Scott. All the talking.
The talking is great. It's good talking. It's very good talking.
Yeah, but can't you remember being like 9 years old and going to see that movie and being like, when are we going to get to the fireworks factory? Except it's the dinosaurs breaking out of their cages and eating everyone.
Yes, but I also acknowledge that 9-year-old me was stupid.
Scott. I just can't with you sometimes. All right. I talked about The Matrix so much, I kind of don't want to say any more about The Matrix, honestly.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, literally just go listen to our episode on The Matrix, and we'll talk about this in way more detail.
So my next one is I'm vacillating at this point. We've reached the point where I start to vacillate, but I think I'm gonna have to go with The Dark Knight. Maybe perhaps a popular pick. And perhaps
I feel like all these are pretty popular picks, but
that's a fair statement. It does. So specifically, I'm referring to the bank robbery, the Joker's bank robbery. Yet again, we're doing exactly the same thing we've said several times, which is introducing the character in a little short vignette. Interestingly, this time it's not Batman we're introducing; it's the Joker, who is the villain. But that, of course, makes sense given the nature of the movie. And it's damn, it is a solid. Didn't they like release that before the movie came out as like almost just like a standalone trailer? I think they did.
I don't remember.
It seems
but
like a crazy thing to do now, though. Like in retrospect, so I'm doubting. I'm going to look this up while we move on.
I think. This is a movie that I'm mixed on in a lot of ways, but I think Heath Ledger's The Joker is absolutely the greatest part about it, for sure. I think it's so funny that the continual problem that Batman movies have is that Batman is the least interesting character in his own movie, and that just happens again and again. And I think that it's a perfect establishing point for this movie that it opens not on Batman but on the Joker, because it's almost as if the movie knows this guy is more interesting. Let's start the movie with a bang, establishing this guy. And yeah, it's great. I mean, I love like, again, like we're talking about how movies manage audience expectations, right? And so this movie opens up with a bunch of people in Joker masks robbing a bank, and we don't know who anyone is, and then we get the reveal. I mean, I guess like probably everyone saw it coming, but the reveal that one of the people in Joker masks is just the Joker, and he just takes off the mask, and underneath it is him with his makeup on and everything. It works really well. Really well.
I just verified they released the first 6 minutes and 38 seconds of The Dark Knight as a trailer, basically.
That's great.
And I remember, God, it seems like an insane thing to do now, but yeah, they did that, and everybody lost their minds because it's great.
Yeah, very great. All right. Next, I'm going to put a Quentin Tarantino movie on this list because it feels only right. I thought about Reservoir Dogs for a while, but I'm going to go with Inglourious Basterds.
Oh, okay.
For one of the best scenes that manages tension in that I've ever seen in my life. This is the scene where we have the Christoph Waltz character entering into the house of a dairy farmer, and there are he's playing a Nazi, and there are Jewish people hidden under the floorboards, and it is like a torturous scene. It is so long and drawn out and tense from minute one. If there's a lot of people that knock Tarantino as being a person who, isn't super original, that's very derivative of all the movies he's obsessed with. And while I think all these things are true and not as big of a deal as everyone makes them, you cannot ever say that he does not know how to craft and manage tension, because the opening of Inglourious Bastards is just like, I just remember being just so viscerally uncomfortable. Like, just, you don't know how that scene's going to go. You don't know. And it's one of the advantages that opening scenes have, because we don't know any of these characters yet. And so we have no idea who is and isn't safe as far as, what the plot is going to demand of these characters. And so anything could happen in this moment. And so we're just waiting for that pot to boil over. And when it does, it's glorious.
Yeah, I mean, the revelation of information in stages is masterclass there, where we don't really know why he's there. It isn't until relatively late in the scene that the camera even lets us know that there are people hiding.
Yeah.
Although there's kind of subtext you could pick up on prior to that.
Yeah, it's just a fun reveal. Yeah, you can tell he's tense, but you're not exactly sure why. And then the reveal that there are actually people under the floor it's just, God, it's good. It's really good.
Yep, that's a good one. I'm debating now, because why not? I'm just going to go for it. My next one was the one on my list was actually going to be Pulp Fiction.
Okay.
Which I think gives us an opportunity to talk about maybe the idea that I think Tarantino actually thinks about this. Like, how am I going to construct just an excellent beginning of my movie to just really, really draw people in and just have them glued to the screen? I think he does think about that.
No, I think you're right.
Because Pulp Fiction is very different from what we just described. Pulp Fiction intro is these two characters having an almost inane, meaningless conversation at a diner. But it's that snappy Pulp Fiction dialogue that everyone tries to imitate but fails.
Yeah.
And you're getting really invested in the dynamic between these two characters. And then suddenly it turns into a stick up. And then we're off to the races. That successfully hooks you, but in a completely different way than Inglourious Bastards does.
Yeah, you're right. It does kind of go against all the rules that we're talking about here, because while it does and it doesn't establish the characters, because it is because of the messed up timeline of that movie. The movie kind of treats both Vincent and God, who's Sam Jackson's character's name? Why can't I remember?
It scared it out of me.
It treats it, the movie kind of treats it as if you know who those people are already, right? Or does the opening have them in it, or is it just the two bank robbers?
It's just the two robbers.
Okay, yeah, you're right. You're
right. We found out later that they were in the diner, but we didn't see them. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we don't know who these people are, and they're having just a normal. Yeah. God, it's such a wonderful moment of, oh, they're gonna rob this place. Where it's like, because they're giving each other cute pet names, and oh, it's so good. Yeah. I sorry, I was thinking of the later scene in the movie when I was thinking of, we're seeing Vincent and whatever his name is, and
Julius.
Yes.
Yeah, Julius. Yeah. The thing that's different about Pulp Fiction is the whole thing is vignettes. Yeah. And so having whatever of your vignettes is the first vignette is going to have to be something that grabs your attention. And I think the fact that there's this subversion is crucial to that one working as the hook.
Yeah, I'm surprised you didn't go with Reservoir Dogs, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this scene is doing a similar thing to what Reservoir Dogs is doing, but this one is ever so slightly more successful at it. I mean, I think this is something reasonable people can disagree about because they're both, I mean, fundamentally they're both scenes in restaurants, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I see your point though. I mean, I don't know. Do you have what would be your case for putting Reservoir Dogs over this one?
I guess, and this isn't fair, but I guess Reservoir Dogs is the first time the world is introduced to the way Quentin Tarantino dialogues scenes. And so is it fair to put it above Pulp Fiction because of that? I don't know. I actually think, the Reservoir Dogs scene has aged a little poorly. I think like it's a scene that the first time you hear it sounds so fresh and so new, and you've never heard people talk like this, but it's been so endlessly copied that I think the original doesn't work as well as it did the first time you watch it. So I guess I'm talking myself into your pick here, but I just, the first time I saw Reservoir Dogs, the first time you're seeing that scene and just the way, the energy and the pace of the dialogue was just something I had never experienced in movies before.
Sure. That's fair.
All right, you ready for my last one?
I am.
So I'm going to put the caveat here that you picked a lot of mine, and so I had to go into the well a little bit
sorry.
here. It's fine. I forgive you. But I am going to pick my favorite and arguably the only good James Bond movie, Casino Royale, and the opening scene of that movie. So for those of you that don't remember, the opening scene of Casino Royale is entirely in black and white, and we're seeing James Bond's first kills, the way he earns his 007 tag, whatever it's called, title, whatever. And I think this is such an important scene because it like we've already talked about, it tells an independent story. This is a hit that he does that has nothing to do with the rest of the story, but it is also establishing Bond as different. This is a different kind of James Bond. This is going to be a different kind of movie from the ones that you are used to. And so we see, the black and white, the choice of doing it in black and white is very stark because it doesn't look like how we would look like Bond. We see that his first kill is very violent and not clean and not, suave. Like it's in a bathroom and it's like destructive and like he gets hurt and like it's nothing that we'd expect from James Bond. But then it ends on this powerful moment of the guy telling him something to the effect of like, don't worry, your next kill will get easier. And he just, from sitting down, just shoots him and is like, considerably. And then it goes to the James Bond theme opening. And then I believe the blood screen wipe thing suddenly bursts color into it and just brings color into this movie that hasn't had any color into it. And it's just, I don't know, man. Like, I think that's a really, really great Bond movie. And I really, really liked how it opened.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a good movie. I think that's a great intro. It's very artistic. It's very stylistic. It's not really what you expect from these films, and it clues you in to the fact that, hey, this is not going to be like the other Bond films. Yeah, that's great. So I have. Let me think. I'm trying to think of which of these I want to go with as my. I think I'm going to pick the one that's the least like the others, just to make sort of a different statement, which is the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Okay. Because it's weird, right? It's this voiceover, lengthy, Galadriel's talking you through all of this history. And what's funny is like, it is exactly what I wanted it to be. I was a huge Lord of the Rings nerd, biggest Lord of the Rings nerd in the world. This movie came out, and it's like, you know how movies, like when you're a super fan for something, the movie never lives up to what you want it to be. The intro to this movie was exactly what I needed it to be. Almost to the degree where it's like, how'd they get away with that? Like, how are these movies so popular? Because they were so nerdy. And I love it, like, and I still love it. And it's interesting because like when I look back on it, or like when I watch The Fellowship of the Ring again, I'm like, man, how did people tolerate this 10-minute voiceover. And the fact is, I think it's just awesome. Like, it's just, you've got these amazing vignettes of like the elves and men versus the orcs on the slopes of Mount Doom. And like at the time, that was the coolest thing you had ever seen. Right. Because it was the first time there was like the mass scale battle with like hundreds of thousands of people on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
Like just like people may forget these things, but like relatively soon before that, or I can't use words right now, relatively recently before Lord of the Rings came out was like Gladiator. And Gladiator is a great example of how they used to do stuff, which is like the camera's kind of cutting really fast and you're getting like snaps of like a group of people swinging swords, but you know that there's not actually 50,000 people with swords. That's probably like 200 people with swords, and we're just cleverly cutting and slicing things together to make it seem like there's a big army, but obviously there's not a big army because that'd be way too expensive. And then Lord of the Rings, especially this intro shot, is just like absolutely bowling you over with the scale and majesty of what you're getting into. And then after it kind of just absolutely blasts you with all of this epic fantasy stuff, we segue into this hobbit reading a book under a tree in the grass, right? And it's just like, okay, whatever we're doing, I'm in for it, right?
Yeah.
That was my that's my last one.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, it's such a God, the degree of difficulty to make that much exposition work. And I think we can see exactly how actually hard it is, because so many movies have tried to do a similar thing where they try to, exposition dump on you the whole lore of their made up world in the first 10 minutes. And it almost always goes terribly, terribly wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, like the fact that they pulled this off is nothing short of remarkable.
Yeah. So that's mine. The remaining ones on my short list, just as a kind of honorable mention, would be Blade, Pixar's Up, and I actually thought that Infinity War had a really interesting beginning because it's like the dourest ending of any Marvel movie by like a factor of 10.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Beginning, I mean, dourest beginning. Yeah.
The dourest ending of the beginning.
Yes.
Yeah. I thought about Jaws has a really great opening. Of course, Star Wars is a pretty well liked opening. So those are the big, but those felt like so like everyone expects you to do that type thing. So I was trying to do something a little different. Sure. So instead I picked checks notes, Raiders of the Lost Ark and Scream, two of the most popular openings of movies ever.
So there's, I forget the name of the psychological effect, but there's some kind of well-studied effect where it's like the beginning of a thing and the end of a thing really determine how you are going to feel about it.
Sure.
And so it's absolutely not at all surprising to me that our list of things with amazing beginnings also includes almost all of my favorite movies, full stop.
Sure.
Because that really impacts how you're going to think about the whole thing that you're about to consume.
That's true. Interestingly enough, though, I don't know, like Inglourious Bastards is, I think, one of the greatest openings of a movie ever. I don't think I'd ever put that at the top of my Tarantino list. It's a good movie, but like he's got so many better movies. So I think that's broadly true, but I'm really interested in the ways that it's not true, because
sure,
like I would not call Inglourious Bastards one of my favorite movies. I'm not even sure I would call Raiders of the Lost Ark one of my favorite movies. Like it's a very good movie and I enjoyed it, but
yeah. And I don't think I'd call The Dark Knight one of my favorite movies either. But I think Jurassic Park and The Matrix are indeed.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, no, you're totally right though, that like just having a great hook doesn't guarantee that the movie that follows it is going to be as good or deserving,
or live up to that hook. Yeah. Or sometimes there'll be a lull after it, like Jurassic Park, right?
Yeah,
Matt?
a really boring slog.
Really boring, amazing scene where Alan Grant scares the shit out of a 11-year-old kid with a raptor claw. That's fucking awful, right?
I mean, that's a great scene.
I could go through these scenes one at a time, and you're gonna go, well, I mean, okay, that's a great scene too.
I mean,
remember the part Remember the part where they're on the helicopter and we meet Ian Malcolm, and then we see how Grant doesn't know how to work seatbelts. And it's a great establishing scene, and yeah, that's a terrible scene. It's really awful.
Yeah, it's just they're so boring. Spielberg's such a hack.
Deconstructing Spielberg coming soon.
Yeah, right.
All right, we're running a little bit long here, so I think that's going to do it for us this week, right? You didn't have anything else.
No, we're done.
All right, that is going to be it for us this week. If you have any opinions on Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, or on your top 5 openings to movies, we want to hear them. Let us know. You can reach out to us via email at doofmedia@gmail.com, on Twitter @doofmedia, or over at our subreddit r/doofmedia.
And if you're not already subscribed to the Doofcast, we encourage you to do so and ensure you never miss an episode. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else podcasts can be found.
And you can find this and all of our shows over at our website, doofmedia.com. And if you like what we do here and want to support us, consider becoming a patron of Doof Media. You can head to patreon.com/doofmedia and pledge at any of the available levels. You get a bunch of cool bonus stuff, bonus podcasts, bonus After Dark episodes that we try to get out to you just about every week. Tons of cool bonus stuff. So check out the details there and support us any way you can.
Yeah, also please consider rating and reviewing the Doofcast on Apple Podcasts, because each review helps us get more exposure and introduces new people to the content we make here.
All right, folks, that's going to do it for us. We will see you all next week.
My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say. My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say.